Jai Hind dosto. Welcome to AP Academy. Today we are going to discuss about Chipko movement. See, this movement is actually a landmark movement which takes place in India in 1970. This movement is also called as Chipko Andolan, which was and this movement was done by the rural villages, especially women's, in order to protect the trees and the forest. And this movement takes place in 1970. Now, where is actually the movement originated? See, this movement was started in the Himalayan region of Uttarakhand, which is at that point of time it is a part of Uttar Pradesh. As we all know that Uttarakhand has been bifurcated from Uttar Pradesh. So at that point of time when this movement takes place, Uttarakhand is the part of Uttar Pradesh. And this movement was held in 1973. And after that it quickly spreads throughout the Himalayan regions. The aim of this movement is to protect the forest and the trees which are indiscriminately cutted by the large industries with the government backing. See, this movement, if you see in the first word, that is Chipko, it actually means to hug. So in this Chipko movement, the villagers and especially women, they hug the trees in order to show the protest and in order to stop the people from cutting the trees. So it is a very important movement. And in 1973 this was the first time when the importance of forest came into the picture. As we all know today that the deforestation, or in the form of development, the deforestation which is taking place, that severely affecting our environment. Nowadays we all know lot of researches are going on about the global warming. So deforestation is also a very big reason for global warming, which is a very big problem for our environment now. So in 1973 it was the first step which was for the environment, for the beginning of the good environment. So now, why is actually this movement started? Why actually this movement keeps going? So first of all, we learned about. Now, what is this Chipko movement? Chipko movement, also called Chipko Andolan, it is actually a non-violent social and ecological movement by rural villagers, particularly women, in India in the 1970s, aimed at protecting trees and forests slated for government backed logging. See, the government has backed many of the industries, large scale industries. They are actually looking for the resource which is there in the forest. Now, as we all know, in our country there are tribal communities are there. There are many tribal communities are there. Their leverage or their life are totally based on the resources of the forest. So at that point of time, lot of big industries came out and they actually wants to exploit the forest resources. And the government, in the name of development, gives the permission to these industries so that they can freely use the resources which are there in the forest. So this movement actually was against this exploitation. So the movement originated in the Himalayan region of Uttarakhand, then part of Uttar Pradesh, in 1973, and it quickly spread throughout the Indian Himalayas. Now, as we all know, the Hindi word chipku, I've told you that the Hindi word chipku means to hug. So the villagers, or especially the women, they hug the tree in order to give their protest or in order to save the trees from cutting. Now, when actually it all started? What is the background of this movement? Now, as we can see, with the conclusion of the Sino-Indian border conflict in 1963, as we all know, Sino-Indian border means China-Indian border. So conflict has been confined in 1963. As we all know, Indio-China war has been taken place in 1962. So after the war has been completed, the border conflict has been concluded in 1963. So then in the state Uttar Pradesh, they are experiencing growth in development, especially in the rural Himalayan regions. Because as we all see, as I've told you, that the industries are looking for the resources which are there in the forest. As we all know, there are many tribal communities. I've told you there are rural villages which dependent highly on the forest for their direct as well as indirect for services. For example, food, fuel, they are getting it from the forest, as well as the services, water purification, soil stabilizations. So the government actually, in the name of development, they actually prevented the villagers to use these resources, and they are giving the resources to the large industries. Now, due to this commercially logging, there are various mismanagement takes place in the forest, due to which the agriculture, erosion, depletion, water resource, everything has happened, and a flood has came due to this mismanagement. So when the flood came to the area, 200 peoples have been died in this incident. A flood has been taken place, and that makes the alarming situation for the peoples of that area to protest against this commercial logging. And the man who is behind this Chipko movement is actually Chandi Prasad Bhatt. He is Chandi Prasad Bhatt. He is a person who is the front runner of this movement, that is Chipko movement. In 1964, he was actually an environmentalist, as well as he belongs to a Gandhian social activist. He started an organization which was called as Dasholi Gram Swaraj Sangh. He started an organization which was called as Dasholi Gram Swaraj Sangh, which was later named as Dasholi Gram Swaraj Mandal. Now, why is this organization has been built? This organization has been built only to accelerate or to foster small industries for rural villagers, so that they can use local resources. So this organization has been made in order to foster or to increase the small industries. So when this industrial lodging is taking place, there is a severe monsoon flood. I've told you that there is a serious monsoon flood which killed around 200 people in the region in 1970. Now, with this incident, this organization, which was created by this man, Dasholi Gram Swaraj Mandal, it started its protest, and it started its protest against the opposition against the large scale industries. So for the first time, the Chipko movement was started in Alaknanda Valley in April 1973. So you should understand the month and the year, that on which year that actually the Chipko movement had been started. It was started in 1973 in the Alaknanda Valley. So in that movement, they this person is there who called the villagers, and they are starting protesting. And when the government does not or denying it, they are started with the protest which was there, that they should hug the village women are going to the forest, and they actually hug the trees so that no one can cut out that trees. So this is actually the thing, the background which is there, so that the Chipko movement has been started. So this is all are written here. In 1964, environmentalist and Gandhian social activist Chandi Prasad Bhatt founded a cooperative organization, the Sholi Gram Swaraj Sangh, which was later named as the Sholi Gram Swaraj Mandal, to foster small industries for rural villages using local resource. Now, when industrial logics were linked to the severe monsoon floods that killed more than 200 people in the region in 1970, DGSM became a force of opposition against the large-scale industry. The first Chipko protest occurred near the village of Mandal in the upper Alaknanda valley in April 1973. I've told you the first Chipko movement takes place at April 1973. The villagers have been denied access to a small number of trees with which to build agriculture tools, were outraged when the government allotted a larger plot to a sporting good manufacturer. See, the government is actually in the state of mind to allot these forests to large scale industries for the development purpose. But with means these appeals of the government were denied by Chandi Prasad Bhatt and the villagers who are there to protect the resources of the forest. So this movement, after many days of these protests, the government finally cancelled the company's lodging permit and granted the original allotment requested by DGSM. So this movement becomes successful, and the government has to step back, and they have cancelled the company's lodging permit. So it is a big win for the villagers, and from that movement, now for the protection of the forest, lot of things are going on in our government organizations. So the Chipko movement thus began to emerge as a peasants and women's movement for forest rights. So this is a very important movement, which was actually the women's as well as the peasants movements. So that this, so why this added? The characteristics of this movement is tree hugging. I've told you, see in this figure, that the women's are there and they are hugging the trees so that they can protect it from cutting. And this was a very important protest, and this protest has been came out with the concept of Mahatma Gandhi's concept of satyagraha. So it is actually a non-violent protest, and this takes place. So this is all about Chipko movement, and I hope you understand what is this Chipko movement is all about. This Chipko movement, due to this movement, there are various other future compositions takes place. Like for example, if you see in 1974, to protest the forest policy, at that point of time there is another leader which is called as Bahuguna, who famously fasted for 2 weeks. As well as there are certain, in 1978 also there is a protest takes place. So basically when one movement gets reward or gets a winning, then it will automatically enhance the whole society and the people to get a confidence that if they can go out for a good cause, then their movement can be successful. So this is all about Chipko movement. It is a very important movement from the environmental point of view. So you need to understand this about this movement, and you have to study it. So guys, I hope you understand about Chipko movement, and I hope you like the lecture. And if you like it, then please subscribe our channel and give as maximum likes as possible. So guys, thank you. Have a good day. Jai Hind.